açaí no Oslodum, bloco áspero da terra do bacalhau.
Oi, tudo bem? I'm Professor Jason. Welcome back to my Jumpstart Brazilian Portuguese course. In today's lesson, we're going to be talking about possessive adjectives and pronouns. We've got plenty to cover, so let's get started. Vamos começar. Alright, just to give you an idea about what to expect in this lesson, here's an overview of the topics I'll be presenting. We're going to start off by talking about possessive adjectives. What are they exactly? And I'll teach you this by going over the English forms with some examples in English. Then we'll switch and talk about possessive pronouns. What are possessive pronouns? Again, I'll illustrate showing the English forms with some examples in English. Then we're going to look at possessive adjectives in Brazilian Portuguese with some uses and examples. I'll show you the forms and the examples, and then do the same with possessive pronouns in Brazilian Portuguese. Finally, we'll look at using the preposition de to express possession in Portuguese. That's the equivalent of the apostrophe S form in English. So, what you see on this slide are the possessive adjectives in English. Possessive adjectives or possessive determiners are words that indicate whom things belong to or are associated with. In English, the possessive adjectives are my, your, his, her, its, our, and their. And they're placed before the nouns they refer to. So here are some examples with each of those. My chemistry class is hard. Do your parents travel a lot? I lost his address. We went to her choir concert. The restaurant changed its menu. Our car won't start. When my friends travel, I take care of their pets. So as you can see, those possessive adjectives go right before the nouns that they refer to, that they modify. All right, so a second kind of possessive words are possessive pronouns. What are they? Possessive pronouns are words that stand in for a noun that's been referenced previously or that the participants in the communicative exchange are talking about. These words emphasize whom these things belong to or are associated with. In English, the most commonly used possessive pronouns are mine, yours, his, hers, ours, and theirs. So you can see those on the side, and here are some examples of how the pronouns are used. Remember, these refer back to a noun that we're all aware of. So I might say something like, he lost his book. His book's that possessive adjective, but I found mine. I've been to her house, but I haven't been to yours. I deleted every email except his. So again, his is just a pronoun that stands in for his email. Is this your backpack? I thought it was hers. They checked every suitcase, including ours. In other words, our suitcase. We've tried every pizza in town, and theirs, their pizza, theirs is the best. Okay, so we've just presented the English forms for possessive adjectives and for possessive pronouns with some examples. Let's switch gears and look at those forms in Brazilian Portuguese. First off, let's look at possessive adjectives, the words that usually come before the nouns that they refer to. So in Brazilian Portuguese, possessive adjectives must agree in number and in gender with the nouns they introduce, which means that each adjective has 4 forms. Now we mentioned in lesson 3 that the subject pronoun você is used with the third-person verb forms as the preferred form of second-person address throughout most of Brazil. So when you want to say you, in most of Brazil, people say você instead of tu, although tu is said in some regions. Since most Brazilians use the forms seu, seus, sua, and suas exclusively in second-person address, in other words, to mean your, they avoid using them to mean his or hers. So on my chart here, under his or hers, I did not put seu, seus, sua, or suas. Those are used exclusively, especially in speech, for your. Okay? So instead, Brazilians use contracted forms that combine the preposition de and the prepositional pronouns. So dele, dela, deles, delas. So his, hers, theirs. The contracted forms do senhor and da senhora right? Those are very formal and polite for your, and da gente for our are also used. Now, you'll see in the examples in a minute that these contracted forms appear immediately after the nouns they modify, whereas the others, as in English, come before the noun. All right? So, also, just wanted to point out, I have the forms for its, seu, seus, sua, and suas on this slide, but these equivalents, right, for its tend to be used, in other words, seu, seus, sua, and suas for its, right, as in the restaurant changed its menu. They tend to be used more in written texts than in speech, so in things like news articles or business publications, all right? So just keep that in mind. Okay, so on this slide and the next, we're going to look at some sentences that have examples of the possessive adjectives from Brazilian Portuguese that I just introduced on the previous slide. So for example, my chemistry class is very difficult. A minha aula de química é muito difícil. A minha aula. Os teus pais viajam com frequência? Os teus pais viajam com frequência? So, do your parents travel a lot? Os teus pais, right? I could also say, if I'm thinking in the você form, os seus pais viajam com frequência? I lost his address. And so remember, for his and her, we're not going to use the seu, seus, sua, suas forms. We're going to use dele or dela. Eu perdi o endereço dele. So in English, it's his address. In Portuguese, it's o endereço dele. Or we went to her choir concert. Fomos à apresentação de coral dela. Fomos à apresentação de coral dela. Hers, dela, her concert. A apresentação dela. So here we have an example with its. O restaurante mudou o seu cardápio. O restaurante mudou o seu cardápio. Our car doesn't start. O nosso carro não pega. I could also use the form da gente, right? Because in Brazilian Portuguese, especially spoken, a gente often substitutes for nós. So I could say, o carro da gente não pega. O nosso carro não pega. And then when my friends travel a lot, I take care of when my friends travel, I take care of their dogs. And I have two possessive adjectives in here, right? Quando os meus amigos viajam, eu cuido dos cachorros deles. And on this side, I just have a few more examples of the use of possessive adjectives in Brazilian Portuguese. Okay, just so you can see a few more. I liked all of my classes last semester. My classes. Eu gostei de todas as minhas aulas no semestre passado. Eu gostei de todas as minhas aulas no semestre passado. Or, how old is, what age does she have, your daughter? How old is she? Que idade tem a tua filha? Or I could also say, a sua filha. Que idade tem a tua filha? Ou a sua filha, right? I met her parents. Her parents. So again, this is a little bit different than Spanish. If you speak Spanish, you're not going to say, conheci os seus pais, because that would only mean your parents. It would be confusing. So if I want to say her parents, I have to use the dela form. Eu conheci os pais dela no churrasco. I met her parents at the cookout. O Paulo vai passar uns dias na nossa casa. O Paulo vai passar uns dias at our house, na nossa casa, or na casa da gente. Means the same thing. Os meus professores, my professors, os meus professores não falam muito sobre a família deles, their families, a família deles. Remember, I can't say as suas famílias, because that would mean your families. So I have to say, os meus professores não falam muito sobre a família deles. And then one more example just with the formal you, using the form o senhor. Desculpe, qual o nome do senhor? What's your name? Qual o nome do senhor? So in these examples, and then the ones on the previous slide, in case you want to flip back, you can see that usually possessive adjectives are preceded, right, by the corresponding definite articles. So we say things like as minhas, os teus, a nossa, os meus. You have that as, os, a, os in front. So including the article in this way is technically optional, but it's extremely common in spoken Brazilian Portuguese. Using definite articles with possessive pronouns is less common in writing, though, especially in formal texts. So in a formal text, you might not have as minhas or os teus. It might just be nossa or meu, right? All right. Another thing I wanted to point out while we're on the topic of using possessive adjectives in Brazilian Portuguese is that, as in the case in Spanish, in Brazilian Portuguese, there's a strong tendency to omit possessive adjectives when it's unmistakably clear from context who something must belong to, as is the case, for example, with body parts or articles of clothing. This can be a little bit tricky for English speakers because we're used to always having to use the possessive in these cases. Okay, but this is similar to Spanish. So if I wanted to say, do you brush your teeth? You clearly hear the your teeth in English, right? But in Portuguese, most often it would be, você escova os dentes antes de dormir? Sorry for my pronunciation, it's terrible today, but você escova os dentes antes de dormir? Os dentes. So instead of using the possessive adjective os teus or os seus dentes, they just omit it because it's obvious that they're your teeth. And so they only include the definite article, os dentes. Another example, this time with washing your hands. You don't have to say washing your hands. You can just say, você deve lavar as mãos antes de comer. You should wash your hands, as mãos, antes de comer. So most Brazilians would not say, under normal circumstances, as tuas mãos or as suas mãos. Just as mãos. It's obvious they're yours. My father always takes off his hat when he enters a church. Meu pai sempre tira o chapéu quando entra numa igreja. So it's his hat, but we just have to say o chapéu in Portuguese. And my friend put on his coat and left. O meu amigo pousou o casaco e foi embora. Pousou o casaco e foi embora. So, not necessary to use the possessive adjectives in Brazilian Portuguese as in Spanish when it's clear that the article of clothing or the body part can only belong to that person. Okay, so let's move on to talk about the forms of the possessive pronouns in Brazilian Portuguese. As with the adjective forms we just learned a couple slides back, in Brazilian Portuguese, the possessive pronouns have to agree in number and in gender with the nouns that they stand in for or refer back to, meaning that each possessive pronoun has at least 4 forms. When using these possessive words as pronouns, use of the definite article is not optional. So you have to say o meu, o seu, as dele, o nosso, right? You have to have that definite article. It's not optional. So here you can see the forms for mine, o meu, os meus, a minha, as minhas. Yours, if I'm using tu, o teu, os teus, a tua, as tuas. If I'm using você, o seu, os seus, a sua, as suas. If I'm using do senhor or o senhor, a senhora, I would use o, os, a, as, do senhor or da senhora, etc. And also the plural form for your plural if it's very formal, os do senhor or os das senhoras, right? So you can see os de vocês, a de vocês. Okay, so there are lots of forms for yours depending on, are you using tu, você, do senhor, vocês, dos senhores, das senhores, okay? The important thing is not to forget that definite article, o, os, a, or as, okay? All right, moving on to his, a little bit simpler. Os dele, or o dele, os dele, a dele, as dele. Hers, o dela, os dela, a dela, and as dela. Remember, for his or hers, we can't use o seu, a sua, etc., because those can only mean yours, especially in spoken Brazilian Portuguese. For ours, we have the forms o nosso, a nossa, os nossos, as nossas. Or we can use the form a gente and say o da gente, a da gente, os da gente, as da gente. And then for theirs, it's going to be deles, the deles or delas form with the definite article. So, o deles, os deles, a deles, as deles, o delas, os dela, a delas, as delas. So lots of forms for the possessive pronouns in Brazilian Portuguese. You may want to come back to this slide and study these forms, but let's move on and look at some examples. Okay, so here are some examples of using those possessive pronoun forms in Brazilian Portuguese, and I don't have an example for every form, all right? That would have made this lesson very long. But again, just for reference, these are basically the Brazilian Portuguese examples or forms, versions of the sentences that I provided as examples for the English possessive pronoun use. So just to remind you, the example in English was, he lost his book, but I found mine, right? Então, ele perdeu o livro dele, mas eu achei o meu. Again, it's o meu because the noun that we're referring back to is o livro, singular masculine. Eu achei o meu. I found mine. I've been to her house. Já fui na casa dela, her house, dela, mas não conheço a tua, or a sua. I haven't been to yours. So I've been to her house, but I haven't been to yours. Já fui na casa dela, mas não conheço a tua, or a sua, or even a de você, less common. Okay, I deleted every email or every message or all the messages except his. Apaguei todas as mensagens menos as dele. Why is it as dele? So dele is his. The as refers back to as mensagens, right? Menos as dele, except his. Apaguei todas as mensagens menos as dele. Okay, is this your backpack? Essa mochila é sua? Or é tua? I thought it was hers. Achei que fosse a dela. Achei que fosse a dela. Essa mochila é sua? Achei que fosse a dela, because mochila is feminine and singular. A dela, hers. They checked every suitcase, or all the suitcases, including ours. Revistaram todas as malas, incluindo as nossas. As nossas. It's as because it refers back to as malas, plural feminine. As nossas. Or you could say as da gente, incluindo as da gente, as nossas. We've tried every pizza in town. Já experimentamos todas as pizzas desta cidade, and theirs is the best, e a deles é a melhor. A deles. A refers back to their pizza. Here we're making it singular because it's just their pizza. That would be singular. A deles é a melhor. Já experimentamos todas as pizzas desta cidade e a deles é a melhor. So there's just a few examples of using the possessive pronouns to refer back to a noun that we know that we're talking about. All right, last slide here. We've already seen a few examples of forms involving the preposition de to express possession. So for example, dele, delas, do senhor. Most of those involved avoiding confusion when using third-person forms of possessive adjectives and pronouns. However, the preposition de is also used to express the equivalent of the apostrophe s form of possession in English. The preposition will often contract with a definite article since these are often used before names in Brazilian Portuguese. So it's common to say o José or a Marta, right? So let's look at some examples in English and compare them to their Portuguese equivalents so you can see what I mean by preposition de is the same as apostrophe s in English. So if you wanted to express an idea like, I like eating at José's house, the English apostrophe s, you would say, eu gosto de comer na casa do José. So I'm contracting the de with the o José. Gosto de comer na casa do José. She left for Marta's, apostrophe s, she left for Marta's party at 11 p.m. Ela partiu para a festa da Marta, às 11 da noite. A festa da Marta, Marta's party. Ela partiu para a festa da Marta às 11 da noite. He drove his boss's, apostrophe s, his boss's car last week. Ele dirigiu o carro do chefe dele, so his boss would be o chefe dele, but it's his boss's car. Dirigiu o carro do chefe dele a semana passada. The students met in their professor's office. So we're going to have a possessive adjective, right? Their professors, which is going to come out as deles, but it's the apostrophe S we're trying to highlight on this example. Do professor. Os alunos se reuniram no escritório do professor deles. All right, that's it for today's lesson. Hope you found it to be informative and useful. If so, would you please like, comment, and share with others? Don't forget to add and follow me on social media for updates, and be sure to come back to the Professor Jason channel again soon. See you next time. Até breve. Ciao.
Eu vou pra Oslo, pra sair no Oslo.